Showfields is the most interesting store in the world. We have a physical location on Bond and Lafayette in New York City, and we're very close to opening our second location in New York, in Miami on Lincoln Road. Showfields was born out of the observation that the physical and the digital worlds had a very big gap. So what was happening is that when you or I, we go to the internet and specifically to Instagram, we can find so many artists and we can discover endlessly. And from a commercial point of view, you can discover very, very cool, hip, young brands that you could never see in the physical world. And most of these brands have a very high set of values. Like these brands are sustainable, they're by young founders, they're vegan, their products, their branding is amazing, and they're good for you and they're good for the world. Most of the brands that speak to our generation, they're mission driven. But when you walk on the main streets of your city, if you walk around Miami on Lincoln Road, or if you walk around Soho or Fifth Avenue, New York City, you can't discover as much as you can discover online. We can say that, there's the same 30 brands in every major street in every major city. And those are the streets that have the most foot traffic. But none of us can discover anything new because nobody can afford to be there, especially not artists. So that's why Showfields was founded. And we help brands, young brands, have a physical space in the world. And we also support emerging artists, and we commission them, and we sell their work on our site. That's why we have the most interesting store in the world, because we can discover a space physically in the same idea that you can discover endlessly while scrolling on your phone.
Yes. And how do you make sure that, since you just mentioned that it is the most interesting store in the world, and people all over the board, they know it by this phrase, that the most interesting store in the world. How do you guys make sure that it remains the most interesting store in the world?
That's a great question. Sorry.
It's fine.
Technical difficulties. That's a great question. So we curate every single artist and every single brand that is at Showfields very carefully. We have our parameters by which we select brands. They have to be mission driven. They have to be really good quality, well made. And when we select artists, we also need those artists to be the voices of this generation. They have to be ahead of the curve. So in general, it's very important for us to really handpick these artists and the brands to tell a full story. For example, in our Miami location, when we open, we're telling a story of sustainability and water rising. So we took this cue because we understand that this is what's important to the city, to the artist community in the city. So every single brand and every single piece of art that we are bringing in is telling the story. Artists are having this research of sustainability and water rising, and many brands nowadays are really interested in creating products that are good for the world. So the whole space tells that one story, and we change our curation every 6 months. So every artist and every brand in our store gets changed up with a brand new curation every 6 months.
Yes. And would you like to share a bit about the founding team? Like, how did they come up with the idea, and how did they thought that, okay, something like this could exist in the world, and what challenges did they face? If you can share a bit about that.
Yes, so the founding team is comprised by Tal Nathaniel, who is a serial entrepreneur, and he's a very, very creative person who was involved in production in the past. And we have Katie Hunt, who is from the founding team of Warby Parker as well, and Amir Zwickel, who is a specialist in real estate. So it's this idea of reinventing retail. And what does that mean? Because retail nowadays exists, you have the big physical retail that, it's been changing ever since, the grand bazaars hundreds of
Yes.
years ago.
Yes.
And it's always going to keep evolving. But people are talking about the death of retail as if retail is going to die. But retail is not going to die, and it's not going to go anywhere. It just needs to keep evolving based on the needs of that generation. And that's why our founding team realized that if the streets are not interesting to us, if our phones are more interesting than the streets, and how can we combine these two territories of e-commerce and physical commerce into one platform that is truly interesting and that speaks to the mission-driven artistic values that we care about and that we consider interesting to discover. And also, the architecture of Showfields is designed in a way where you can walk around and navigate and always discover something interesting and new in every single corner.
Yes. And since you just mentioned about that retail will evolve in a way that earlier 100 years ago, we used to have bazaars, and then now we have the modern retail, and then in the contemporary form, retail is evolving. So like, how do you make sure as an organization that you stay ahead of the curve? Because in next 6 months, something new is gonna come, and next 6 months, another new thing is gonna come. So how do you make sure that you are ahead the curve and evolving with the trend?
So that's a great question. For example, one of the things that we started implementing last year by trying to be ahead of the curve, not even knowing how useful it was going to come post COVID, is that we created this app called the Magic Wand, in
Okay.
which when you're walking through our store, every time you see an artwork or a product, you can scan from your phone and get all the information from that product or artist by audio and text.
Okay.
We made it to be very inclusive of people, who might be low vision or hearing impaired, or in general, just to improve the experience of retail for people who might want to walk by themselves and not necessarily talk to someone, because we have amazing brand hosts that in our team that, can give you a tour of Showfields. But of course, right now people might feel much more safe to scan the products and read about it and have knowledge about them without having to talk to another human. And we were amazed that this was becoming a trend after COVID, when we had already started this project last year. So we know that the world is changing very fast due to technology, and that we are still a startup and we move very fast, and we can, go ahead and be before our time and innovate and always think about what the future of retail really is. So uniting these two fronts of digital and physical, how you experience within the store and also from your home, is very important to our strategy. For example, wherever you are in the world, you can video call into our store. You can check out all of our amazing displays. You can also inquire about the products, and somebody from our store will pick up and have a one-on-one conversation with you about your product needs. They'll say, is your skin dry? Maybe you need to try this. Maybe you need to try that. What does the product smell like? So it's a safe digital experience, but it's the closest experience to physical you can get. And from an artistic perspective, we also do live art shows on our website every week. We invite museum curators from all over the world and all of the artists, and they're discussing the works as the works are immediately for sale during the live. So sometimes that's even better than walking into a gallery or museum where you don't necessarily know who the artists or the curators are, and the experience can be a little intimidating. But we have found ways to democratize that experience so that you feel like you're getting invited into the conversation, you're getting all the knowledge. Everything that we do has a charity component. So just by showing up, we usually donate $1 to the curator's choice of charity. And we found many ways that we can, collaborate with audiences all over the world and bring people, in our physical stores, the best of the world, and bring people, from everywhere, the best of New York City and soon Miami.
And you just mentioned about your Miami store. Would you like to share a bit about your Miami store? Like what new we can expect in that store, and what surprises you can share at that moment, if you can?
Yes. So we're opening at the end of November, hopefully. And we have very, very interesting brands and very interesting artists. Like, for example, from the artistic perspective, we have, since the whole concept is about water rising and sustainability, we have very, very interesting interdisciplinary artists, for example, who are both artists and marine biologists, or artists and climate change activists. So the narrative is very, very strong. And then we have very cool brands who are working with sustainable materials, sustainable packaging, botanicals that are really good for the earth, that are really good for humans without toxins. So it's a very interesting curation. And we've seen increasingly at Showfields that brands want to collaborate with artists. It's not, a painting here and a brand display there. It's really like a collaboration that feels very much like a collective, because artists have a way of explaining a message that will create an immediate connection, an emotional connection with the audience. And like I said, most of the brands nowadays are very value driven. So they understand that this collaboration can just help improve their message in a way that is exponential.
And you just said that a lot of the brands today these days are looking to collaborate with the artists. So when I'm, for example, if I am a home decor brand and I'm coming to Showfield, so how can I expect, or like, can you share with me like some of the ideas, like how do you collaborate?
Yes.
Like how do you make sure that brands are collaborating in harmony with the artist?
That's a great question. Actually, in Miami right now, we are going to work with a brand that's a very well-known furniture brand, and they have invested a lot of their own internal resources into creating furniture using very clean and 100% recyclable plastic, which is not obvious because sometimes when you see recycled plastic is composed by very different materials that are chemical and not just 100% clean. So this brand has invested a lot of resources just in the research of creating sustainable furniture, which is why it's so interesting for them to be part of the story of Showfields Miami. And we are creating a collaboration, hopefully with an art school, in which students will intervene the furniture on behalf of the brand. And we're probably going to work together as well with established artists that this brand has worked before. And that will create also an educational platform between established artists and emerging student artists together, all talking about sustainability, using sustainable materials, in the context of where everyone else is telling the same story.
Yes. And since you just mentioned about like when we look at the concept of Showfield, so we clearly see that there is a not 2x, 3x, but 10x more engagement than the traditional stores which are out there. So in any conventional store, what the engagement is like, as a customer, my engagement is much higher in Showfield. And now what example just you shared is that the students who are gonna in a way that they are going to do something with a home decor or a furniture brand. So do you think that in coming time, the brands who will make their priority that they must have the higher engagement ethics in terms of creating the spaces, do you think they will have a higher success probability in future in retail?
Yes, I do think that, at Showfields, we have many, many things in store. We have so many activations by artists. We have so many surprises. We have a slide inside our store that's
Yes.
hidden behind a secret bookcase. So people understand when they come to Showfields, just by the way that this experience is designed, that it's not just, coming in and looking around. The experience is designed for you to discover. It's designed for you to go to look at, behind the bookshelves, to find the secret doors, to look at the corners. And that's why people spend 3 times more time at our stores than at every other department store. So I think the key, is to create both spaces within the store that are, made by Showfields, and also to encourage brands to more and more use this type of experiential design to create more engagement in a physical way.
Yes. Tam, I have one question. Since Showfield is a comparatively young startup, which was started 1.5, 2 years ago, do you think that this pandemic have, or in a way that, do you think that this pandemic in some ways have kind of disturbed the growth of Showfield?
Actually, no. I mean, of course, we in the beginning, we had, different brands that were very concerned, or inventory that was stuck in China or in Italy, or different concerns like that. But we definitely have seen the opportunity within this pandemic more than we have seen the challenge. As soon as, the lockdown was starting in the US and we had to close our doors, we put everything, all of our brands and all of our artists in an online platform, which was part of our plan, but we accelerated a lot and like doubled down on the online project. And now we have collaborated with over 40 art curators, with over 50 brand, tastemakers. We have sold a lot of art and different products online. That way, we can sustain all of the brands, the artists, ourselves, our team, and different charities by donating for $1 per person who joins. And everyone in our ecosystem has been benefited by this win-win strategy that has been moving everything online. Not only that, in the physical realm, there are many, many brands that, are closing down stores, or maybe they're bigger brands that had a very, aggressive strategy of expansion, and now they're pulling back, and they're starting to realize that Showfields is an amazing option for them, because they don't have to invest so much internal resources on the actual production of retail. They can invest more in their products and services, and have Showfields, for a very affordable price, take care of all of their retail aspects for them. So it is, the market is shifting. But it's, there's many brands who have done very well online, or brands that, are actually doing better because of the needs that this pandemic has created in terms of wellness, for example. And therefore we are looking at every single opportunity from our end in order to stay afloat and to keep our ecosystem alive.
Do you think that in a way, since look, in a way it is a disadvantage, since you're a young startup and you need to see growth in every aspect of what you're doing, but in a way it's also good because you're a young startup and you have the power, you have the capacity to adapt changes very quickly. If you are a company with 500 stores, it's not that easy to adapt the change. Do you think it's a blessing in disguise for Showfields?
Yes, I think it's a blessing in disguise. I mean, there's no option but to look at it that way. One has to be optimistic, and Showfields is here to stay. We have two long-term, buildings in the US. Our goal is to expand, and we, are very creative team of entrepreneurs and designers and creative minds, and we are going to find the silver lining and the blessing in disguise in every single aspect. There's no other choice.
Yes, I think there not just with Showfield, this is the same thing with everybody. There is no other choice than to see the silver lining. And because the way you have designed your story, the design of your story is very creative, very engaging. In Showfield, do you have in-house design team, or you have outsourced all of your design work to an architecture studio or interior designing studio?
No, we don't. We have everything in-house. So we have an amazing team of architects, retail designers, visual merchandisers. Our creative director, Samara Jones, has worked for enormous brands like Coach, Anthropology, etc. So we bring the best of all worlds, from a like artistic or set design perspective. My background is in art curating. And we have an internal team of people who design for brands, and we all collaborate together and bring like our interdisciplinary practice to the mix.
That's so good. And
we did.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So we have worked on one occasion with a different design studio. We worked with Crosby Studios for the design of our lab in New York City, and
Okay.
we're also working with them for one aspect of the interior design in Miami. So that's a very exciting collaboration as well.
Yes, I'm sure. And Tam, do you think that since you yourself, you're an art curator and you are working with Showfield as the head of art curator, and you have a lot of knowledge in this particular domain, do you think that with this pandemic, with this technological evolution, do you think that there are new doors which are getting opened for the artist out there, which was not earlier accessible for the artist?
100%. So my personal goal or my personal research is how art can influence other industries, or how can the art mentality become more and more interdisciplinary and intertwined with other industries. So retail is one example of that. Um, so artists, back in the day, classically, I feel like the art world would sort of punish them for using their skills to make a living in other areas, such as, working in galleries or working as designers or working as architects or working as cartoonists or whatever it is. And nowadays, I feel like those boundaries are blurring, thank God, because um, artists need to be free from those constraints, and they don't need to be inside their studio starving. They can collaborate with other industries and bring their mindsets to make other industries accountable for improvement.
Mm.
So the fact that we're working with artists who are climate activists or artists that are marine biologists is giving us even more knowledge and more of an edge to make ourselves accountable to actually be sustainable. And that's the power of artists, and that's what they can do for retail. And that's why I'm interested in working with Showfields, because I don't want to preach to the choir. The art world in general can be an echo chamber. So my goal is to find new audiences, new economies, new cultural models for artists.
Mm. And what you just shared, and maybe something you just shared 10 minutes ago also, what when you were discussing about interdisciplinary thing. So what I believe that in this modern world, the professionals who are having the knowledge and the expertise of multiple disciplines, they are going to have higher rate of survival than the people who are having the expertise in only one discipline. So do you think that when the world is opening up for the new entrepreneurs, when the world is opening up for new engineers, new all of new professionals who are going to come, that the people should always go and have understanding of multiple things, so that in order to be successful or in order to create something valuable, they have something to share, and in the way that they can mix two or three knowledge of 2 3 disciplines, and they can create something much better for the world?
100%. I think that humans by nature are multifaceted. You can be an artist and a marine biologist. You can be a mother and a professional skydiver. You can be, gender neutral. You can be so many things that are, in even contradictory areas by society standards. So I think that's the trend, and I think we're more and more going towards that. And it's definitely part of what we look for when we search for the most interesting. So that's I think the new trend, and less seeing someone who's maybe just a painter, but just trying to be more holistic about how we define artists, how we define brands, and how we define people.
For example, large sculpture installations, large, kinetic works. So it's a very, very beautiful visual language to speak about the holidays, and to bring in as well different art objects that are interesting that people might want to acquire and give as gifts. And then in Miami, we have our opening curation, which is about water rising and sustainability. So a lot of the work is, resembling water, what's going on in the water, marine life, nature, Miami's nature. So it's an ode to Miami. We want to celebrate the fact that we are coming to Miami, thanking Miami for opening their doors to us. At the same time, addressing this issue, which we know is so important to the creative community in this city. And then for 2021, both in New York City and Miami, we're going to be hosting an open call for art that is related to healing. Healing both mentally, both physically, recovering from such a difficult year. So all of our products and our artwork is going to be around that thesis. And hopefully we're working on some ideas for collaborating with institutions such as hospitals, so that the work that we showcase at Showfields can potentially be then showcased at a hospital. So we always have, all of our curations are very mission driven. All of our online art shows have a charity component, and that's a very important aspect of what we do.
Yes, that's really incredible, because that's how you can bring a lot of change in the world, not just in the capitalistic form, but in the socialistic form also.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
And what you just said, shared about that, you had this vision for 2021 also. I think that's the first time, because as a podcaster, we get to meet with a lot of brands, but this is the first time I'm hearing it from a brand who is having these kind of plans. So this is really, and I really want to congratulate your entire team on these kind of thought process you guys are having internally.
Thank you. Honestly, it's so fun for us, you know, to be able to talk to artists and see them as like the observers of society, and how they're really driving the conversation and putting them center stage and providing our brands with so much value that's coming from the arts.
Yes. And Tam, since you work with a lot of artists, can you please share any story if you have in mind that you thought that, okay, what this artist is doing, it's really intellectual thing and it needs to be shared with the, it has to be shared with the audience. Like, do you have some kind of story like this?
Wow, I have so many, so many stories. I just want to say in general that the most important thing about art, and especially right now, is that it reflects the times that we're living. It has to reflect the times and the context that we're living. So, for example, right now, you know, in Showfields, we're driving many different contexts. You know, for Miami, there's so many amazing stories from artists. For example, there's an artist, her name is Beatriz Chachamovic. I just met her last week, but she was telling me, you know, she grew up in Sao Paulo, Brazil, very far away from the ocean. And the first time she went to the ocean, she had such a magical experience. It became an obsession for her to study the ocean. She became, you know, an artist and a marine biologist. And through her artwork and science, like interdisciplinary, driving the conversation towards, you know, taking care of our oceans, specifically our coral and our fish. So I think specifically what I'm interested in is those artists that are really observing the world and the challenges that we're facing now. And with their art, they're making a change that is interdisciplinary, that goes beyond just like the galleries or museums, that actually do outreach, you know, into another industry, and make real change. Like you said, for example, there's an artist in New York City, which I worked many times. Her name is Arancha Araujo. She's from Mexico, and she has a neuroscience degree from Columbia University. So she studies the effect of our neurons when experiencing art and when experiencing movement, specifically performance. And she studies this on herself as a performer and in the audience as a viewer. So this is the type of work personally drives me. But the reason that it drives me is because I feel like each of these artists in their own observation can translate into whole entire new industries.
Yes.
So it can speak a language that, you know, that like a room full of engineers can understand tech art better than I do, that I'm a curator.
Yes.
So starting those conversations is what I'm all about.
And since now your job with Showfield is to work with artists, like if it is okay with you, like were you always interested in art? Like, what was your background? Like, did you went to university and studied art or something related to this, or does it
Yeah.
happen with? Okay, would you like to
So
share? Yes, yes,
yeah,
please go.
I started as a dancer and a piano player. So I was a
Okay,
professional ballet dancer for during my childhood.
okay,
Um, and I do come from a family who really taught me to appreciate the arts. I was always very exposed to art museums, galleries, classical music. So it's always been culture, I would say, more than just like the visual arts, but culture has always been the driving force for me. I'm from Venezuela, from
okay,
Caracas.
okay.
So I always felt like culture was a way for me to understand this society, you know, to through the art that were working in the 80s and 90s when I grew up. And when I was dancing and I was meeting, different dancers from all around society, it was a way to connect with people, but it was also a way to sort of escape problems. So art, for me, that's what it means, you know, it's a way to like really understand any problem that society might have, any challenge, but also how to solve it. And also it gives you the sense of escape, or the sense of entertainment, or the sense of aesthetic relief. So it's that tension that makes it interesting. So I did study art history, literature, and in France, and then I worked as a journalist for many years. I got another degree in politics, which I think is a very good complement to art, because you know the art movements and the history and the politics that were happening at the same time. You always have the full picture. And I've been an art curator for more than 10 years, working for different art collections, galleries, institutions, and working directly with corporate clients in their own activations in collaboration with different artists, and now with Showfields.
That's really great. Like, so you have a lot of experience with art, and since you explain whole, I had two of my friends. I know only two people from Venezuela. You're the third person I know, and both of them, they were very interested in arts. Like, they were very good at dancing, and they were always very interested and curious in knowing the culture. So I don't know if it's the DNA or if it's the coincidence that the three people I know and all of them are kind of very much into the art and culture and all of this stuff.
Yeah, maybe you and I are a similar age, but the 80s and the early 90s were definitely a time where the arts in Venezuela were booming. There were a lot of artists that were having very important success around the world, like Cruz Diez or Soto, which you still see in major museums around the world. And I think right after that we have a dictatorship that is still ongoing, right? So a lot of people like me who got to live the pre-dictatorship and the post-dictatorship had that moment, like that sweet spot, or the end of an era, so to
Yes,
say,
yes,
in which Venezuela was seen positively on an international stage due to its culture. For example, also the Sistema de Orquestas, which is the youth orchestra movement, is very, very important in Venezuelan society. So I think that what you're saying is on point and probably true.
yes. Tam, I have one question. It might not be in the context of Showfields, or not might be in the context of what we are talking right now, but I have seen a lot of great artists who have a lot of great taste of art, but they don't have those financial resources to kind of go and pursue their art. So now, since you just mentioned that you have been working with artists for such a long period of time, so in these times when we are looking at things going digital and people have access to their audience at not very high cost, so do you think that if one of our viewer is having similar situation, like, can you suggest that person something that if they don't have those financial resources but still they want to follow their passion?
Yes. So that's another topic in which I'm super passionate about. And I don't think artists need to wait for a gallery. I don't think artists need to wait for anyone. I think artists are entrepreneurs. You know, some people don't like to hear this because it's like, you know, forbidden. And the relationship between artists and their finances is like supposed to be a delicate subject, but in reality, it's really not. You know, artists can apply to grants, or artists can, you know, use their skills to work in the market as designers, as architects, as illustrators, as cartoonists, as whatever it is that their skills permit until they can sustain themselves. I'm not of the philosophy that artists should be punished for being outside their studio or trying to survive, because I know that most of the art world would not agree with me, and I've written extensively about this subject for that same reason. I think artists should also be very resourceful when it comes to their materials and the way that they build, at least in the beginning. You know, definitely try to upcycle. There's many resources in some countries, like Materials for the Arts in New York City. And I've seen in this pandemic, you know, artists creating amazing work in their kitchens, you know, because their studio buildings are closed. Or I really encourage artists to like think of themselves as entrepreneurs and take ownership of their career, and use tools like Instagram, YouTube, whatever they're comfortable with to showcase their message, and to get curators or people who can give them opportunities to notice them, to be persistent, to apply to every single open call, to not give up. There's more artists working now than ever before in history. Yes. And there's also more opportunities for artists now than ever before in history, especially because the future is interdisciplinary, and it's about collaboration, and it's not about artists starving in their studios to get into 10 mega galleries and collections, you know, like it was maybe a decade ago.
Yes, that's really great, because I feel that every artist, what you just said, that they should think of themselves like an entrepreneur. Before I shut this particular topic off, I have just one last question, if you allow me, because one of my friend, he's Bulgarian, and he's an artist. Like, what he does, he makes sketches of automobiles. He's very passionate with that. Like, he have been doing that his whole life, and from past 1.5 years, he's doing that commercially, that he's trying to go on websites, Instagram, and just trying to sell his paintings. So like, since you have a lot of experience in this industry, like, is there anything which you would like to suggest to someone like him, that he can use potentially to scale up his artwork?
So for example, if he's passionate about drawing and sketching automobiles specifically, I would literally reach out to car brands or, you know, this sector and offer my services. You know, like, it could be an interesting collaboration for, you know, for their marketing team, or, you know, maybe dealers around the city. You know, so you can knock on a lot of doors and find someone who is willing and open and has the open mind to see the potential with that. You know, like, if Showfields were to have I haven't seen your friend's work, but if Showfields were to have a client who's an automobile brand, that could be something interesting. And I always suggest to artists as well to be really firm about their voice and their concept. And the question that I ask every single artist is, what keeps you up at night? What keeps you up at night? Because, you know, you can describe someone as like loving automobiles and wanting to sketch and draw them, but what's behind that? You know, what's like the depth of that idea or concept? And that, once an artist knows that, sketching is just one way, but there's a million ways that you can find within different art mediums to express that same idea. And that's when you have a signature. And the more, you know, multidisciplinary, multi-mediums ways that you can express that one idea, the more potential you have.
Thank you so much for answering this question. It was my personal question. And for someone like my friend, if he wants to reach out to Showfields, what he should do, like the next step should be, if he wants to reach out, he should wait for one of your open call, or he can write an email to you. Like, what should be the process for someone like him?
So usually we say, you know, follow us so you can know when the next open call is.
Okay.
And if you go to our website, you can always submit your work through our website as well. And we're always, you know, looking at all the submissions we get daily from artists from our website.
Okay. Thank you. And now, since we move from this side of artists to more of a side of brands which exist primarily on Instagram earlier, and now they are collaborating with earlier we have seen a lot of pop-up shops which some people have used it, and now this is such a great platform that what Showfield have provided. So can you please share with me a story of a brand if you have in mind, like earlier they were not seeing, or they were having some constraint in their growth because they don't have the physical presence of the product, but because of Showfield they got that presence and now they are doing a little bit better.
Sorry, I'm getting some calls. Okay, so a story of a brand. A story of a brand. So, I mean, I think we have brands that are at every different stage in their retail life. You know, we have brands that, you know, that have never ever been in retail before, like very, you know, small brands. And then we have international brands, like for example Logel, which is a furniture company, a travel brand. They have suitcases, and they're based in Hong Kong, and they wanted to, you know, test the waters in the New York City market. So Showfields is a great option for them. We had brands like Quip, the toothbrush, who
Yes.
wanted to, they've been doing a lot of very strong online presence and sales and work. So they wanted to store in New York City. But imagine that, you know, when Showfields has 10 stores around the world, as a brand like Quip or like Swell, the water bottles, you don't have to, you know, have a whole team and invest in a retail strategy, because we've already done all that research and we already have the team and the knowledge. So all you have to do is, you know, literally send us your inventory and approve the design of the space, and you could potentially have 10 stores around the world in 1 second.
Yes.
So
you know, this conversation which we are having right now, so it have moved from being a traditional podcast which we usually have into a very informative session which is going to be very helpful for artists, because we as a House Galleria, when we started, it was for designers, architects, interior designers. So because of that we got in touch with a lot of furnishing brands who are manufacturing furniture manufacturers. And what you just said, that if Showfield is having that kind of reach, and you just mentioned about one brand, the Hong Kong based brand, so I think it will be very helpful for a lot of our collaborators in future also, that what we will be sharing, so that they can reach out to Showfields and they can use this as a platform to market their products, because what you guys are doing, it's really amazing. And do you can you tell me that in how much time, or like can we, like in which year we can expect a Showfield store which is out of states?
outside of the States,
Yes.
if you had asked me this question last year, I would have said this year. But this year, so, you know, in the next 2 years for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yes. And as of now, if someone wants from outside, like they can still collaborate with you for your online things, what you are in current process right now.
Yeah. We have a lot of international brands, like I said, who, you know, they want to test the US market with less risk, and Showfields is a great option for that.
Yes.
And I in this economy, there's also a lot of big brands that, you know, maybe are not doing so well, or maybe like the retail apocalypse reached them faster than they expected. And even for some of these brands, Showfields is also a great option. because it gives them less risk and just, you know, control over the management without all the work
Yes.
and all the investment.
And do you think that if I am a furniture manufacturer, let's say somewhere from Africa, and I want to move into states into these markets, and I come to Showfield, and we did a pilot project with Showfield, and we get the great response. So there is a huge potential that with the help of Showfield, that I can scale up to the bigger market, to the masses of states, I think.
Exactly. And then I see you're mentioning furniture manufacturers a lot. We've worked with different furniture manufacturers, for example, for our outdoor spaces. And these can be done in collaboration with an artist. So, you know, for many brands, this is a very good opportunity to create content, to create PR around their products. We have community spaces in all of our locations, like in New York City, we have a great rooftop. In Miami, we have a beautiful like stage and bar area in which you could do like our brands could do events as well. So that's another way that we serve brands through our community spaces.
Yes, because I've seen that you have that co-working space by the name of Loft in your building, which people can come and use.
Yes. Well, we used to have it open last summer for people to come and use. Now we partner up with different fitness company to offer like safe outdoor socially distanced workout classes.
Oh, that's really great. And like when you are working with these kind of ideas, like how does it work? Like, do you usually look at the opportunity and then you think of it backward, or you just kind of think of that, okay, there are so many gyms which might not be in use in this pandemic, and then let's do something with that. Like, how does this process work as a company with Showfields?
So at this point, we have a lot of brands who, you know, reach out to us through our partnerships department, and we, you know, we find ways to collaborate with each other. Sometimes the brand really knows what they want. Sometimes they come to us for ideas, most of the time. And, you know, in the beginning, it was us, you know, trying to explain to the brands what was our vision. And it was through art that we, you know, using the space to showcase art, that the brands could understand the potential of the space. And now we have a wait list of brands who want to be part of our spaces, and we handpick them based on, you know, their design, their innovation, their mission-driven strategy. So we have our own parameters, the same that we have parameters to select artists. We have parameters to select the brands we work with as well, and making sure they're actually the most interesting.
I am really thankful of you to share all of this information with us.
Thank you so much for the
yes. And thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful that you came on our podcast, and thank you so much for sharing all of that information.